Courage, Understanding and Practicing Courage for Teenagers, created by the English Montreal School Board Spiritual and Community Animation Service of 2020. What is courage? Courage is the willingness and ability to work through obstacles despite feeling embarrassment, fear, reluctance, or uncertainty. Courage involves making positive choices even though they may be difficult. Courage is not the absence of fear. We like to think that people who are courageous because they do daring things, risky things, dangerous things. They really put themselves out there and they seem extremely confident and capable and competent to do anything. And we like to think that that's courage, but that actually is not what courage is. Being courageous means doing the things that you want to do because you know that they're good for you, or they could be good for others. And even though you're afraid of doing those things because you're not sure how it's going to turn out, you do them anyway because you know that it's going to be beneficial. That's actual courage. When we think of courage, we tend to think of, like I said, big, brave, extraordinary acts of courage, leaders who take on very risky stances and put themselves out there, supporting ideas, promoting certain ways of life that others may vehemently disagree with, and yet they go up there and they stand up and they say, this is what I believe, this is what I think, this is what I know to be true. And it's dangerous for them, it's risky for them, but they do it anyway. We like to think of that as an extraordinary act of courage, and it is. It's very courageous. We also tend to think of people who work in industries or in jobs who put themselves in dangerous situations as part of their job, like the police or firemen or the military and doctors, nurses. And so we think of them as courageous because they're putting themselves out there to help their community, to do their job, even though they are afraid they could get hurt. They could experience violence, but they go out there and they do it because it's part of their job and they overcome their fear. So we think of those professions and those acts of bravery as courageous, and they are courageous, but these are extraordinary acts of courage. They're not regular, ordinary acts of courage. And practicing ordinary acts of courage on a daily basis is actually what we should all be doing. It will help us grow and become the best version of ourselves as we practice courage more and more. So what are some ordinary acts of courage? Being kind to all kinds. Admitting when you're wrong, moving on, and being honest. It takes courage to express your feelings, make ethical choices, tell the truth, admit our mistakes, ask for forgiveness, and in general, being a good person. That takes a lot of courage. This is especially true when we are surrounded by people who are not leading by example, and we have to take the stand ourselves and lead the example. Again, very courageous, and I wouldn't call these small acts of courage. I would simply call them ordinary acts of courage, ways that we should be courageous on a regular daily basis. And we behave in a way that honors our own identity and our value system. From courage comes love, belonging, joy, creativity, and purpose and meaning. We want to experience all of these things, and courage and practicing courage on a daily basis will lead to these experiences. I want you to take out a sheet of paper and I want you to write down these statements. And then next to each statement, you're going to rate that statement from a 1 to a 5. 1 being that you have a low level of courage when trying to complete this task or to accomplish this goal, and 5 being a high level of courage. 3 being it's in between. Okay, so I'm going to read them, and then I want you to rate them on a scale of 1 to 5. So, how courageous are you in these different scenarios? Asking someone out on a date. Is that a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, or a 5? Volunteering to take the penalty shot in the last minutes of an important game. Asking a teacher for help. Telling an adult you trust that you've been mistreated, either by a peer or somebody who's older. Going on your first job interview. Standing up for equality based on sexual preference, ethnicity, religion, race, lifestyle choice, what have you. Standing up for someone who is being teased or picked on. So being what we call an upstander and not a bystander. An upstander is someone who stands up for someone. A bystander is someone who sits back and watches things go by. Taking your driver's test. Saying hello to a new student or a new neighbor in your town or your community. Sitting at lunch with a student who sits alone, even though you don't really know them, or you do know them and you still decide to sit with them. So rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5. How courageous can you be in these different situations? This is a self-assessment. There is no judgment here. It's just a way for you to become a little bit more reflective on where you stand right now. And maybe there's areas where you want to think to yourself, I want to be more courageous in those areas. It's important to me that I'm able to fulfill these goals, these personal goals of mine. And so I'm going to be more mindful of my courage levels in these situations and practice and work towards becoming more courageous as more of an automatic response to these scenarios rather than having to work through it and taking my time with it. Here are some examples of some youth who are teenagers, early 20s, okay, young people just like you, who are practicing their own versions of courage, and they are Canadian. So let's look at some Canadian youthful examples of courage. This is Autumn Pelletier. She's a 16-year-old Ojibwe girl from the Wikwemikon unceded territory in Manitoulin Island. And she has been advocating for clean drinking water for her community and communities across Canada. She has been advocating for clean drinking water and environmental rights for her community and communities across Canada since she was 8 years old. She has called on the Prime Minister to invest in the health and well-being of First Nations across Canada. Travis Price. So on the first day of grade 12 at Central Kings Rural High School in Cambridge, Nova Scotia, he learned that there was a grade 9 student who had been bullied for wearing a pink shirt. And so he decided to be an upstander about it. And he told himself and the rest of the school that he would be wearing a pink shirt to school the next day. To take a united front against this bullying, he and his friend David convinced hundreds of his fellow students to be upstanders and wear pink shirts to school that day. And so this is where the movement of the Pink Shirt Day, this is where it came from. It came from Travis Price in Nova Scotia. And by one small little act of saying, you're picking on this person for dressing in a way that you don't agree with, well, I'll dress that way. And are you going to pick on all of us? And that creates a movement. This is Faye Johnstone. So Faye is a trans feminine, non-binary youth who's passionate about providing quality sexuality education for young people across Canada. And Faye's from Ottawa. And the way that Faye decides to support the cause is by organizing marches and rallies and giving speeches, as well as working with multiple organizations within the Ottawa region in order to provide and teach on how to provide quality sexuality education. in the school system and in communities. This is Reina Nazra Zadani. She is a disability and human rights advocate. And so she advocates on behalf of anyone within the country who has a disability, whether that be a physical, cognitive, or emotional disability. And she is committed to providing accessible and inclusive education in Ontario and across Canada. She personally has cerebral palsy, and she felt discriminated against by her own education system that discouraged her from pursuing a post-secondary education because of her disability, her disease. And so she overcame that obstacle, and now she also advocates on behalf of the rights of other with disabilities across Canada. She has said that the negativity and discouragement that is placed on young people with disabilities cuts short their potential and their empowerment. And from personal experience, I've worked with students with disabilities, and I know that they face so many challenges on just to exist in our society, just to have access to just buildings and to have access to services and activities that we all take for granted. Just besides that, then there's also the added obstacle of bullying and being told, can't you just go and just not make a big fuss about anything and be quiet? And I'm really proud of the students that I've worked with because they've overcome these challenges and have really, really succeeded in life. And finally, we have Tina O. She's a student activist and is from rural New Brunswick, Canada. And she is a divestment organizer in a nationally recognized student-led fossil fuel divestment campaign at Mount Allison University. So divestment means that we pull investments out of something. So if we want to invest in a company, we give that company money in order for them to grow their business and grow their industry and grow their sector. If we are divesting from that company, we are taking money away from that company. Instead of investing, we're taking whatever we gave them, we're taking it back, and we're repurposing that money. We're putting it towards other investments that are more in line with your values as a human being or as an institution. And so she ran a campaign, a steering committee for a national climate convergence called RISE 2019 in Ottawa to gather, skill share, and train young people in direct action, movement building, and anti-oppressive organizing. Her mission is to divest from fossil fuel companies and instead reinvest in energy efficient and earth-friendly resources and energy production. For example, wind, solar, tidal, etc. Please read the quotes from each of these activists because they are very inspiring. And the reason I showed you this isn't because I want you to think I need to be an activist in order to be a courageous person, but I want to give you some examples on Canadian young people who are just, they have an idea, they have a passion, they have something that is important to them, and they're doing what they can in order to be an upstander, in order to advocate for their cause. You don't need to have giant campaigns. You don't need to have millions of dollars or be part of some international non-government organization. It's not necessary. You can just create activism within your own school community, within your own school. If you see an injustice taking place and you want to stand up against that injustice and change that part of the system that you're part of in your school, you can. And there are ways to do that. And I think all of these young people are great examples of how to do that in an effective way, in a pro-social way, in an anti-oppressive way. And I encourage you to please do some more research on each of these young people to see how they manage to accomplish their activism. And if it can inspire you or give you some ideas on how you can accomplish your own personal activism within your own community and your own school. Fear. Fear is what stops us from being courageous. It is the block. We have to learn not how to manage our fear, but how to listen to our fear, talk to our fear, and decide if our fear is being useful right now or if it's just preventing us from doing things that would actually make our lives better, right? Is the fear preventing us from taking care of ourselves? And so understanding how the brain works and where that fear response comes from will help give you the tools in order to calm those fears if they're not necessary. Because there are some times when fear is very useful. Fear protects us. And so in some cases, yes, being afraid is justified. Okay, we need to escape. We need to run away from the situation or leave that situation. But normal everyday occurrences, not so much. Everyday situations don't necessarily require a fear response. So let's try to understand first where fear comes from, how our brain works, and why fear can take over sometimes. We're going to be watching a video.
Did you know that parts of your brain are over 500 million years old? Your brain has pieces in it that are older than T-Rex. I like to compare the brain's evolution to a phone. The first phone was super basic. It was a landline. You could only get or make calls, and you were locked right to the spot where your phone was plugged in. Then came cell phones. They looked like walkie-talkies. No text, games, videos, apps, nothing. Now, your phone has gotten a lot smarter. Just like smartphones, as your brain upgraded, a new part came online called the prefrontal cortex. It allows you to think things through and to create and to visualize things like music, videos, and cool projects. It's known as the thinking brain. Now, let's look at the operating system of that early edition human brain. Imagine you walk into a time machine and roll back into the past. You wake up, walk out of your cave, and into the blazing sun. You feel a rumbling in your belly. Picking up some food from the store is not an option. So off you go to forage for something tasty. You look for berries at the local patch where the antelopes hang out. One tries to steal your berries, and before you know it, you end up in a fight for your life. You head down to the pond to get some water, being careful not to disturb the squad of saber-toothed tigers that are chilling near that spot. You hear one creeping up right behind you, and you take off running. Once you lose that tiger, you find a cool spot to rest. A huge black bear shows up out of nowhere. You are so startled you freeze up and hide behind a rock so he won't eat you. Just like the first cell phones were basic, the brains of our ancestors had these three basic reactions when we were in danger: to fight, to run, or to freeze. Whenever we felt danger, our brain's alarm system, known as the amygdala, would go off, code red, and scream to our bodies, "Must stay alive." Your body would immediately shut down everything that isn't needed and superpower everything else in order to help you fight, run, or freeze to stay alive. Now I want you to imagine that you jump back into your time travel machine and leap forward millions of years ahead to now. You're sitting in class and a friend tells you that so-and-so has been talking behind your back. You feel your muscles get tense and your face gets hot while your mind starts racing. What's happening? Is your life in danger? No, but your amygdala still reacts as if it's back in the jungle with your life in threat. Now you're sending out angry texts that you later are going to regret. So, how do you stop getting hijacked by your amygdala? You start by using the upgraded part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex. This upgraded part of your brain is just like your smartphone. It has so many apps to help you handle any situation that life throws at you. Your brain's emotional chill app comes online and saves you from sending out texts you later regret. So, how do I make sure my smart brain shows up when I need it? Well, this is the magic of mindfulness. When you practice mindfulness, it grows the upgraded part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, and shrinks that old part of your brain, the amygdala. The more you practice, the more it becomes automatic for your smart brain to run the show. And you have more control over how you respond to whatever comes your way.
So that video helped you understand where this fear response comes from. It comes from a very, very old part of our brain, a part that has been with us for millions and millions of years and is always working, okay? So there's generally three parts to our brain, old part, a middle old part, and the newer part. And so it's the old part and the new part that have to talk to each other. And that's how we're able to recognize that the situation that we're in is not one that warrants a fear response. And by fear response, I mean fight, right? We fight back, or we flee, we run away, or we freeze, so that essentially we're trying to make ourselves invisible, okay? Those kinds of responses are necessary in dangerous situations. When there's a fire, an earthquake, an animal is chasing you, a car is coming up too fast and might hit you, okay? When you're in a dangerous situation, that fight, flight, freeze response is what we need, because that's what protects us. That takes us out of the danger zone. But other situations, example, giving a presentation in class, going up to someone that you like and talking to them, giving a performance, doing a test, handing in homework or an assignment, feeling embarrassed in a social situation, being in a confrontational conflict where we're trying to stand up for ourselves in front of somebody else, you know? So in these situations, we don't need to fight. We don't need to run away. We don't need to freeze. We can be assertive. We can problem solve. We can work through that situation. We can solve the conflict. So it's important that our brain learns how to talk to itself. Okay, so in front of you here on this picture, it's a great visual. Okay, so you take your hand, okay, and this part here is your old brain system, okay, the limbic system. This has the hippocampus and the amygdala that controls your emotions. This part here is your brain stem, okay, which connects to your spinal cord. This part is very, very old. This is what controls heart rate and breathing and things that we don't really control ourselves, okay, that are just automatic. And then this part here, the back of your hand, represents the cerebral cortex, okay, the cerebral cortex, the new part of our brain that is able to problem solve, plan, create, imagine, and it's what makes us humans. Okay, our language centers come from this part of our brain, etc. So what we need to have happen is we need our old part of our brain, our limbic regions, and our cerebral cortex to always be in communication with each other, to always talk to each other. Okay. When we let the fear take over and the fear response takes over, this could happen, right? What researchers call flip our lid, okay? We freak out. Okay, we freak out in a situation that other people around us might not think is warranted. They might think this isn't a situation where you have to be this, like, you have to freak out over this. But we do, because we've allowed the fear to disrupt the communication between the limbic system and the cerebral cortex, between the amygdala, where our emotions come from, our fight, flight, freeze response, and where our problem solving comes from, okay? So we need to reestablish that communication. And there's different activities that you can do in order to do that. In the video, he says mindfulness. So mindfulness, meditation, and prayer are all essentially the same thing. And what they do is they allow you to have time and space to be in a quiet place, to connect to something meaningful, to focus on something in particular, and to realize that it's okay to take our time with things. It's okay to think things over. It's okay to reflect before we respond, rather than quickly react. Okay, and so over time, as you practice mindfulness, prayer, and meditation, either or, you will eventually train your brain into taking its time to respond to a situation. In the meantime, of course, because that is a skill, okay, being calm is a skill, takes a lot of practice. But in the meantime, as we're practicing, there are things that you can do in the moment that will help reform that connection, okay? Reform that connection in that situation. So one thing that you can do is practice diaphragmatic breathing, okay? So we're going to do this together. You're going to sit either on the floor with your legs crossed or on a chair, and your knees are together, your shoulders are relaxed. You're going to take one hand and put it over your heart, and the other hand you're going to put it over your belly. And you're going to take 5 slow, deep breaths. But you're going to breathe in and out with a certain tempo, okay? You're going to breathe in for 4 counts. You're going to hold that breath. And then you're going to breathe out for 4 counts. So you breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, and out 1, 2, 3, 4, hold. And you do that 5 times. You're going to breathe in through your nose. And as you breathe in through your nose, you're going to feel your diaphragm, which is where your tummy is. Okay, the lower part of your tummy. You're going to feel your diaphragm expand. And then when you breathe out, you're going to feel it contract or go in. So let's do this together. Breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. And out, 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. And out, 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4. And hold. And out, 1, 2, 3, 4. Last time, breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4. And hold and out, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I challenge you to do this 10 times a day. Once you get really good at it, it really helps. Another thing you can do are brave poses. Okay? There's been some scientific research saying that when you adopt what's called a brave pose, it actually tricks your mind into thinking that you're braver than you actually are, even though you are braver than you actually are. Okay, so you can practice different brave poses. Really, it's all about taking up space, standing tall and proud, looking up, okay, and reminding yourself through your body, through using your body, that you are actually a very courageous person and that you can overcome this situation. Okay, so you can have your hands on your waist, you can have your hands up like this, you can have your hands going up straight, okay, arms up like this or like a star, legs apart, okay, hands behind your head. So really you're taking up as much space as you can. You're holding that for at least 2 minutes. Another thing you can do is yoga. Practicing yoga on a daily basis or on a weekly basis for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes is mindfulness, but of the body. Okay, and so it kind of combines actually those 2 practices. It combines physically taking up space and being very present with your own body, as well as being mindful, okay, and practicing mindfulness and meditation and prayer. So this is a yoga sequence for courage. I'm going to click on the images. You're going to see the stance. You will adopt the stance and then move into the second one. So first we stand tall, straight, core is in, our backs are straight, our shoulders are relaxed. Okay, we're pulling ourselves in 2 directions. Our head is going up and our pelvic bone is going down. Okay, so we're making ourselves as straight as possible. And we start with some simple breathing in and out. Look towards the sky, look around you, look up, look down. Okay, breathe calmly to get into the zone. Move on to tree pose. Place your hands on your hips and try to lift your foot up to your calf while keeping your hips level. Don't lean too much this way or that way. If your feet have to stay on the ground, if all you can do is lift your toes just a little bit, that's perfectly fine. As Yoga with Adrienne always says, if you fall, don't worry, we'll catch you. Move on to Warrior 2. So take a big step back with your right foot, turn your toes in about 90 degrees, Bend your left knee over your left ankle. Don't let it go past it. And then open your arms and puff up your chest so that you're nice and tall. Exalted warrior. From this position of the warrior 2, you will take your left palm and you will bring it up towards the sky and try to bend a little bit backwards with your right hand leaning against your back leg. Now do this pose, warrior 2, on the other side. Okay, if your left foot was back, now it's your right foot. If your left foot was forward, now it's your right foot. Move on to exalted warrior, same side. And then move on to goddess squat. So come back to the center, turn both feet out about 45 degrees, facing the long edge of your mat. Bend your knees so that they're over your ankles, but not going past your ankles. Take your arms out into a cactus shape and spread your fingers. Gently come out of these poses, bow your head, and say thank you. Another way that you can practice courage is by reflecting on when you are courageous and in different situations when you can be courageous. I encourage you to take out a piece of paper, create 4 boxes, and then within those boxes, write down the times that you have done these things. Okay, write about a time when you stood up for yourself. Write about a time when you stood up for an idea that was really important to you. Write about a time when you stood up for others, and also when you helped others stand up for themselves. Being courageous is not just only about ourselves and making sure that we are able to overcome our fear, but it is also lifting and supporting others and overcoming their fears and empowering them. And sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is nothing at all, and instead to listen, seek to understand, ask questions, and ask what the other person needs. Here are some excellent quotes. You can pause the video and read them. Okay, without courage, we cannot practice any other virtue with consistency. We can't be kind, true, merciful, generous, or honest. Okay, this is Maya Angelou. I want you all to know that you are courageous, that you do practice courage on a regular basis. You just might not be mindful of it. And in those very, very difficult situations where you feel like you're about to flip your lid, I want you to remember that it is a natural response. Your brain is naturally trying to protect you. What you need to work on is making sure that the communication between your cerebral cortex and your brainstem is fully functioning. To do that, practicing mindfulness, yoga, prayer, meditation on a daily basis, reflecting on the times when you have been courageous, reflecting on the times when you should be courageous, and asking yourself, what can I do to overcome these fears? Remembering that there are young people out there just like you who have to stand up for ideas, who want to stand up for others, who need to stand up for themselves, and they're able to do it. And if they can do it, so can you, because everybody can be courageous. Okay. Practicing courage on a regular basis will increase your ability to be courageous and will increase your efficiency at being courageous. Go out there and be courageous. You can do it. Thank you.